Months passed, and life slowly returned to a kind of normal. The threats were gone, the scammers arrested, and the paranoia faded enough that I could walk down the street without constantly looking over my shoulder. I used the rest of my winnings wisely, investing, helping those in need, and securing a safe, modest life for myself. I realized I didn't need a flashy lifestyle to feel rich. Freedom, safety, and the ability to make a difference were worth far more than cars or mansions. The $1 million had changed my life, but it also taught me lessons I'd never forget. Money can bring danger as easily as comfort. Trust is priceless and rare. Helping others can be the most rewarding investment of all. I now live quietly, but meaningfully. I volunteer, invest in communities, and check in on people who remind me of my old self. Every time I help someone avoid the despair I once felt, I feel that the lottery wasn't just luck, it was a second chance to truly live. And for the first time in a long time, I sleep peacefully. Just when I thought I had found some peace using the money for good, Marcus got a call late one night. "They've found you," he said, his voice low. "The main group. The ones orchestrating everything. We need to act fast." Before I could process it, Marcus led me to a secure location. It was a nondescript warehouse, but inside, there were monitors showing live feeds of various streets in the city. My life had turned into a war zone, and I was at the center of it. And then, they appeared. The ringleaders of the harassment, the attacks, the scams, all the people who had tried to take my money. They weren't street thugs or petty scammers. They were organized, calculated, and ruthless. Marcus turned to me. "You've got two options, run forever or face them. But if you face them, we do it smart." With his guidance, we set up a sting. Using decoys, hidden cameras, and careful planning, we lured them into a trap. Within hours, law enforcement swooped in, arrests were made, and the group was dismantled. For the first time, I could breathe without fear. I realized how fragile security and safety had been and how quickly everything could have spiraled out of control. The $1 million had brought danger, but it had also forced me to grow, learn, and finally stand up. After weeks of hiding, dodging scams, and dealing with constant threats, I started wondering, what was the point of all this money if I couldn't even enjoy it? Marcus suggested something that changed everything: help others who were in situations like mine before the lottery win. He said, "You've survived the chaos. Now use it to create a positive impact. That's the only way to make it truly worth it." I hesitated. My first instinct was to hoard, to keep every dollar for safety. But then I remembered the crushing debt, the nights eating instant noodles, the fear of eviction. And I realized, there were people out there still living that life. So I started small. I anonymously paid off overdue utility bills for several families I'd read about in local forums. I funded scholarships for students in financial distress. I donated to local shelters. The feedback was immediate, but anonymous. Stories of people whose lives were suddenly easier, children who could attend school without fear, families who no longer faced eviction. For the first time since winning, I felt peace. The paranoia didn't vanish, but it felt lighter. I realized the money wasn't just for me, it was a tool. And in that moment, despite all the threats and chaos, I understood the real power of winning the lottery. It wasn't the $1 million. It was what you did with it. Just when I started feeling a little safe, reality reminded me that money attracts everyone, and I mean everyone. A few days into my new, hidden life, I received an email from a supposed investment company. They claimed to have an exclusive opportunity that could double my winnings in weeks. The email was sleek, professional, and convincing. I almost clicked the link before remembering Marcus' words. "Trust no one. Money makes people dangerous." I showed the email to Marcus. He raised an eyebrow. "Classic scam. They're targeting lottery winners like bait. If you even respond, they'll know you're real and start working harder to get to you." We traced the email and discovered it came from a network of people who had been following my story online. Some were scammers, some were low-level criminals testing the waters, and some were downright dangerous. Marcus set up traps, fake replies, monitored accounts, decoy phone numbers. Within 24 hours, the scammers revealed themselves. Some tried to threaten me directly, others used subtle psychological manipulation, but every attempt was neutralized. It was exhausting, like playing chess in real life against invisible opponents. But I started learning the rules. Money doesn't just buy freedom, it buys a whole new battlefield. By the end of that week, I realized something chilling: the threats weren't random. Every move I made, every dollar I spent, every friend I tried to trust was being watched. And yet, despite all the fear, Marcus reminded me, "You've got $1 million for a reason. Survive, and you'll see what it can truly do." The stranger, who finally introduced himself as Marcus, wasted no time. He had a plan, but it wasn't simple. "First," he said, "we need to make you invisible. You can't walk down the street, use your bank account, or even show your face online the way you have been. They know you. They're watching." He took me through a series of steps I'd never imagined I'd do. Closed all my social media accounts. Set up a new, untraceable phone line. Rented a temporary apartment in a building with no cameras and minimal foot traffic. Changed my name legally in a way that wasn't suspicious, just enough to throw off anyone digging into me. It was exhausting. Each step felt surreal. My mind kept flashing back to the $1 million lottery ticket in my safe. Money that could have bought me any car, any house, any luxury. And yet here I was, hiding like a fugitive. "We'll also need to monitor anyone who comes near you," Marcus added. "I have contacts, cameras, even some old-school tailing techniques." "You won't be alone. But you have to trust me." I nodded. What choice did I have? For the first time since winning, I slept without checking the peephole every 5 minutes. Marcus' plan gave me a small sense of security. But as I was about to discover, staying alive and staying rich were not the same thing. Every step forward brought new surprises, and some of them would test me in ways I never expected. I slowly opened the motel door, keeping the knife raised just in case. Standing there was a man in his late 30s, wearing a dark jacket and a baseball cap low over his face. He raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "I've been following those who target lottery winners. You're not the first, and unfortunately, you won't be the last if you keep going the way you are." I froze. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice trembling. He glanced around nervously, then stepped inside without waiting for permission. "People see lottery winners as easy prey. Muggers, scammers, even relatives, they come out of the woodwork. But I know how to protect you, for a price." I wanted to scream, to call the cops, to run. But he wasn't like the attackers. His presence was calm, controlled, almost professional. "Who are you?" I asked. He finally removed his cap, revealing piercing blue eyes. "Let's just say, I specialize in cleaning up the mess others leave behind. And right now, your life is a mess that needs cleaning." I realized then, this was no ordinary threat. My win had thrown me into a world I didn't even know existed. And the only way out might be to trust someone I didn't know at all. For the first time since the lottery, I felt a flicker of hope, but also fear. Because in this game, trust could cost you everything. After the attack, I couldn't pretend anymore. This wasn't paranoia. Someone, or maybe multiple people, were actively targeting me. The money that was supposed to save my life was now making me a walking target. I started making small, desperate changes. I changed my phone number. I moved my few belongings into a cheap motel across town, paying cash. I even considered leaving the city altogether, but everywhere I went, my face was still online. You win the lottery, and suddenly, you're public property. One night at the motel, I sat on the bed staring at the check. Well, the copy of it I kept hidden in my backpack. It didn't even feel real anymore. $1 million, and I was eating cold takeout in a sketchy motel room, afraid to step outside. And then, another twist. A knock at my motel door. Sharp. Repeated. Not the kind of knock you ignore. I froze, my heart pounding. Nobody knew I was here. Nobody. I grabbed the kitchen knife I'd taken from home and crept toward the door. Then a voice came through, low and urgent. I know what's happening to you. Open up. I can help. I didn't recognize the voice, but something in the tone, it wasn't a threat. It was almost desperate. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to keep quiet. But then the voice added, If you don't let me in, you won't survive this. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just running from shadows. Whatever this was, it was bigger than I thought. And against every shred of common sense, I unlocked the door. I barely slept for days after those messages. Every sound outside made my heart race. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, paranoia from suddenly having money. But then it happened. I was walking back from the grocery store late one evening. I had my earbuds in, half distracted, when I felt it, someone behind me. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But then the footsteps quickened, matching my pace. I turned just as two guys in hoodies rushed me. One shoved me hard into the wall, knocking the groceries everywhere. The other hissed in my ear. You think you can just sit on that money? People are starving while you flaunt it. Hand it over. My brain went blank. I stammered something about not carrying cash, but they weren't after my wallet. One of them pulled out a knife. I don't know how, but adrenaline took over. I swung the bag of canned food I was holding straight into the knife guy's arm. He yelped, dropped the blade, and I bolted like my life depended on it. Because it did. I sprinted through side streets until my lungs burned, finally bursting into a late-night diner where people were sitting. I collapsed into a booth, shaking so hard I could barely breathe. The attackers never followed me inside. I called the police, and once again, they showed up hours later, took a statement, and gave me the same line. We'll look into it. But their faces said it all. Random muggings happen all the time. No proof it was connected to my winnings. But I knew. The text, the car vandalism, and now this? Someone was hunting me. And the scariest part? Whoever it was, they weren't stopping. After the car vandalism, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. Every time I left my apartment, I scanned the street like a paranoid cop in a crime show. And it wasn't just in my head, things started happening that proved I wasn't imagining it. One night, I heard noises outside my door. Not just random hallway sounds, footsteps that stopped right in front of my apartment. I froze, listening. Then a soft scrape, like someone dragging metal across the doorframe. By the time I worked up the courage to look through the peephole, the hallway was empty. 2 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. You don't deserve that money. Give it back or we'll take it. No name. No context. Just that. I went straight to the police, but of course, they shrugged it off. Probably a prank, they said. Just block the number. But the way the officer avoided eye contact told me he didn't believe it either. I decided to lay low for a while. No flashy spending, no showing off. But the damage was already done. People knew. My face had been plastered all over the lottery website, and now strangers, neighbors, maybe even friends were seeing me as nothing more than a walking stack of cash. That night, I slept with a kitchen knife next to my bed. And then, at 3 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Another message from the same number. We're closer than you think. I didn't sleep a second after that. After days of paranoia and staring at that creepy letter, I decided, screw it, I earned this money. I deserve at least a little happiness. So I did what every broke person who suddenly gets rich dreams of. I went shopping. I walked into an electronics store and, for the first time in my life, didn't even glance at the price tags. I bought the biggest TV they had, a new laptop, and a phone so expensive I swear it could probably launch a rocket. The cashier looked at me like I'd robbed a bank. Then came the car dealership. I'd always driven beaters that coughed and wheezed on the highway, but this time? I walked straight up to a shiny black sports car and said, "I'll take it." No haggling. No loan paperwork. Paid in full. The salesman nearly fainted. Driving it home felt like living in someone else's body. People stared, kids pointed, and for the first time in forever, I wasn't invisible. But that night, reality slapped me in the face. I came out of my apartment the next morning and saw key scratches down the side of my brand new car. Deep, ugly lines like someone had done it out of pure spite. Taped to the windshield was a note. "Rich boy doesn't belong here." My stomach dropped. It wasn't just jealousy, it felt personal. Someone in my neighborhood clearly hated what I had become overnight. And suddenly, all that joy from buying my dream car evaporated. Because I realized, having money didn't just give me freedom. It also painted a massive target on my back. A week later, the wire transfer finally hit my account. Seeing that string of zeros made my hands shake so bad I nearly dropped my phone. It didn't feel real, like the screen was mocking me. The first thing I did? I paid off every single debt I had. Student loans, credit cards, overdue bills, gone in a click. That alone felt like I'd won the lottery twice. For the first time in years, I could breathe without the weight of debt crushing my chest. But here's where things got weird. My bank actually froze my account for 48 hours. They said it was routine security measures for such a large sum, but I could tell they weren't used to seeing someone like me suddenly holding that much money. They asked questions. A lot of questions. It felt less like banking and more like an interrogation. And then, just as the account unfroze, strange things started happening. I noticed a black car parked across from my apartment for 2 nights in a row. Same car. Same spot. No one ever got out. My email inbox flooded with offers from financial advisors, most of whom had sketchy Gmail addresses. A random guy at the gas station told me, "Hey, congrats, man! Saw your picture on the lottery site." I'd never seen him before in my life. It was surreal. Like I had accidentally joined some secret club where everyone knew who I was, but I didn't know them. And then, the real kicker, I got a letter in the mail, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with the words, "Money changes everything. Be careful who you trust." No signature. No explanation. Just that. I stared at it for hours, wondering if I should be scared or grateful. Within 2 days, it was like my phone had turned into a slot machine of endless notifications. Old classmates, coworkers I barely spoke to, even a cousin I hadn't seen in a decade, they were all suddenly my best friends. "Hey man, congrats! So happy for you! By the way, I've been going through a rough time. Could you maybe spot me a few hundred? I heard the news. You deserve it. Listen, I've got this amazing investment opportunity." Even people who had mocked me for being broke were suddenly sweet-talking me like we'd been family forever. And then came the creditors. Debt collectors who had ignored my payment plans for months suddenly grew very polite when they heard I'd come into money. One even left a voicemail saying, "We'd be happy to work something out with you. Congratulations on your recent good fortune." Like, excuse me, how the hell did they know already? But the worst hit me at home. My ex-girlfriend, the one who dumped me a year ago because I was going nowhere in life, showed up at my apartment. She stood there in a dress that probably cost more than my entire rent, smiling like nothing ever happened. "So, I heard the news. Maybe we should talk. I've been thinking about us." I laughed in her face. It wasn't even a bitter laugh, more like the kind of laugh that escapes when life throws something so ridiculous at you that your brain short-circuits. I shut the door, but my chest was tight. Because I knew this was just the beginning. Winning $1 million didn't just change my life, it put me under a microscope. Everyone wanted a piece. And deep down, I knew I wasn't ready for the storm that was about to hit. The next day, I barely slept. I kept the ticket in my pocket at all times, checking it every 10 minutes just to make sure it was still real. My paranoia was through the roof. I even imagined someone breaking into my apartment to steal it, even though no one knew I had one. I called the lottery office and scheduled an appointment to claim the prize. They told me to bring identification and the ticket, and that it could take several weeks for the payout. Walking into that office felt like walking into another dimension. The receptionist smiled politely, but my brain was screaming, "They're going to laugh in your face. This can't be real." But then the official checked the numbers, scanned the ticket, and looked at me with this calm, practiced expression. "Congratulations," she said. "You're our newest millionaire." I nearly collapsed. My knees literally gave out, and I had to grip the counter to stay upright. The staff took me into a back office where they explained all the boring but important details: taxes, payout options, lump sum versus annual installments, financial counseling. I nodded through most of it, barely processing a word. By the time I left the building, the news had already hit their official website. My name wasn't listed yet, but it was only a matter of time before the story became public. That's when my phone started buzzing. Calls. Messages. People I hadn't heard from in years suddenly checking in. I hadn't even told a soul, but it seemed like the universe already knew. I should have felt unstoppable. But instead, an eerie sense of dread crept over me. Winning $1 million had just painted a giant target on my back. The next morning, I woke up with zero expectations. My electricity was indeed cut off, and the silence in my apartment felt heavier than usual. I took out my phone, sat near the window for a bit of natural light, and opened the state lottery website. I carefully typed in the numbers from the ticket, fully prepared to laugh at my own desperation. But then, I froze. One by one, the digits matched. First the smaller prizes, then the larger ones, and finally, every single number aligned perfectly. I checked again. And again. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I thought it was a glitch. I thought maybe I was hallucinating from stress. But no, what I held in my hand was the winning ticket worth $1 million. My first reaction wasn't joy. It was disbelief mixed with fear. I had read enough stories about scams, technical errors, or winners being disqualified for tiny mistakes. My brain immediately started racing with questions. What if this is invalid? What if I lose the ticket? What if someone tries to take it from me? Instead of celebrating, I locked the ticket in a small tin box I once used for spare change, shoved it under my bed, and sat there in complete silence. It felt surreal. Just hours before I had been broke, drowning in debt, with nothing but noodles and darkness in my apartment. Now I potentially held a piece of paper that could erase all of that in an instant. But as I would soon learn, winning money doesn't just solve problems. Sometimes, it creates new ones you'd never expect. So, I never thought I'd be the one to write something like this. I used to scroll Reddit, reading those life-changing stories, thinking they were fake or exaggerated. But now, it's me. A year ago, I was at the lowest point in my life. I had over $45,000 in debt, credit cards, payday loans, even borrowing from people I really shouldn't have borrowed from. I was barely making enough to cover rent and utilities. Every phone call gave me anxiety because it was probably a debt collector. The worst part? I felt completely alone. My friends drifted away when I couldn't keep up with their lifestyle anymore. My family, well, let's just say they had already helped me once before and told me I was on my own this time. One night, I was sitting on the floor of my apartment, staring at the final notice for my electricity bill. It was going to be cut off the next morning. My fridge was empty except for expired milk and a packet of instant noodles. I had $11 in my bank account. And then, like some cruel joke, I found a lottery ticket in the pocket of an old jacket I hadn't worn in months. I honestly couldn't remember even buying it. The numbers were drawn the previous night, and I figured, why not check? I've got nothing left to lose. That's when everything started to change.